Good morning, welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. As expected, Ben Shalom and BOXXER have struck up a deal with the BBC to show regular cards. We hope will be regular cards. Now, no full details have been revealed, but apparently a deal has been signed. They've come to an agreement. And what will happen is that main events or, like major the major bulk of the cards, the main card, will be shown on the BBC, terrestrial television. Potentially, millions of people will have access to watch it. There's no paywalls other than the license fee, of course, which we shouldn't forget about. But nothing's pay-per-view so far, we hope. But they will also show undercard fights, behind-the-scenes footage, and so on BBC iPlayer. And this is, to me, my immediate reaction is this is a very good thing because it is free. Again, we won't forget the license fee, but it's free-to-air TV. Okay, boxing on TV. How can that possibly be a bad thing? It isn't a bad thing. People slag it off. It's not the same as the Zone, and it's not like Sky TV. It's like they're almost glad to pay more money for boxing, or that if you pay more money for boxing, you automatically get a better quality. I mean, you might get bigger names, you might get bigger fights, but you don't necessarily get good quality. Anyone who's been to small hall shows knows that the quality very often is fantastic. Okay, good competitive fights. You don't know who's going to win. You enjoy what you're seeing. If you're a real boxing fan, it doesn't matter really whether someone is a big name or not. And, some of the big fights deliver too, of course. Let's not forget that. We've had some excellent cards on DAZN, Sky, and, all those bigger platforms. But I think it's a good development for boxing. Now, the downside is how much money is going to be put on the table, because if you do like watching the bigger names, you have to wonder, well, how are they going to lure them over to perform on the BBC? Channel 5, of course, have shown boxing sort of intermittently for quite a few years now, which is good. It's great. Again, free to air. You get a massive audience potentially. Anyway, a few 3 million people might watch a Channel 5 show. That would be that's a lot more people. Watch a lot of these pay-per-views, and but where's the money coming from? Will Ben Shalom and the BBC come to deals where they can keep fighters happy? And I'm thinking, of course, of Ben Whittaker and Lauren Price and Caroline Dubois is another one, Fraser Clark. They've got to keep them happy with regular work and with good money, because at Sky they were getting decent money, and people have slagged off Ben Shalom, they've slagged off BOXXER, but they have done some good things. And I think Ben Shalom was on a hide into nothing, quite simply because he was very, very inexperienced when he came in to such a big deal, to be given this treasure trove of money where he had to build a stable. He was following on from Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, who had a fantastically successful deal with Sky and put on loads and loads of great shows. So he was on a hide into nothing. I don't think it was all negative. I think he's learned his lessons the hard way, and he's been embarrassed at times, big time embarrassed. Like with the Liam Cameron rematch with Ben Whittaker, where there was a typo or something it was meant to be a 10-rounder, and then it was a 12-rounder, and it was down to a simple typo, and they had to come to some sort of deal, some sort of arrangement. And also, of course, he's pulled his fighters out of purse bids, which is not a good look, never a good look. So Shalom, inexperienced. He's still only in his early 30s, even now, but he's had a baptism by fire. Okay. Now, as far as the BBC are concerned, people are saying, well, when was the last time the BBC put boxing on? Do they understand boxing? Well, the last time that professional boxing was on the BBC was in 2005. It was, let me think now, it was Rico Hoy, I think, came over to Britain to fight Clinton Woods for the IBF light heavyweight title. Yeah, 2005. So that's 20 years ago. But the BBC were actually the first broadcaster in Britain to show boxing. We have to go back to 1938. It was the first televised boxing in the UK. It was between Eric Boone and Arthur Danaher, who I'm sure you don't remember. Well, perhaps you do remember them. I don't. But before my time, 1938 was the year my mother was born. So no, even she would remember that. Slightly before the Second World War, of course. But in other words, they go back decades. They have always, and they've shown amateur boxing as well. The BBC, so they've had their fingers in the boxing pie on and off for 90 years, 80, 90 years, whatever. So I think this is a good thing. I think this is a good thing for boxing. Ben Shalom is still a young and experienced promoter. I think ideally he should have started off with this deal, cut his teeth on terrestrial telly, and then maybe jump to Sky with its pay-per-views. But life's not like that. It's kind of like winning the area, the English, the British, the Commonwealth, and the European. Ideally, I suppose, if you're a promoter, you want to cut your teeth on smaller hall shows. Whether Shalom can retain his stable, I think it's unlikely. I think the bigger names are going to probably leave. I think Ben Whittaker will probably leave. Fraser Clark might leave. But this is not a bad development. The more boxing we have, the more promoters we have, the more platforms we have, the better it is for everyone, especially the punter. And it's like when David Hay put a couple of his shows on, Haymaker shows, on that Dave channel. People go, "Oh, Dave, what fancy put it on that channel?" What are you on about, you daft twat? It's free boxing. You're watching it free. You don't have to, it's not behind a paywall. Same thing with this, apart from the TV license. So let me know your opinion. What do you think of this? Comments below. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the like button as well. And spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Oh, there goes the phone. I better go and get that. Catch you later. Bye for now.